Hey guys, Herman here, welcome back to the channel, and I hope you're having a great day, great week, or great weekend, depending on whenever you're going to be watching this video. And yeah, for today's video, it's not going to be a track vlog, it's going to be a commentary-like video, the first of its kind on this channel. So yeah, I mean, if you want to watch it, you can watch it, because I've edited it quite a bit, and if you just want to listen to it in the background about what I have to say, then yeah, feel free to do so. I mean, yeah, I hope you at least find it interesting, but yeah, just remember that any opinions expressed in this video are made by an 18-year-old, me. So don't take anything I say way too personally, guys, that it's the right answer. It could be wrong, it could be right, I have no clue, but yeah, that's enough for me for now. So yeah, let's get into the video, and I hope you enjoy it. Sport. A hobby and a pastime for many, where many do it to get into shape, stay social with others, and also watch others practice said sport. Whilst many do practice sport, only about 5% actually make it big time, professionally, and make it into a living. I mean, it's clear that these people work hard, train hard to get where they are, but one question does arise. Which sport is the hardest, the most difficult, requires the most out of someone's body? What inspired me to make this video is this statistic ranking the sports based on difficulty that I saw on Instagram and Twitter a couple times, which is apparently made by the ESPN, which baffles me completely. Which made me look into other statistics about this, and there was one common trend. There is no mention of the decathlon or combined events at all. Now you might be thinking, oh, it's a combined event, it combines multiple events, of course it's going to be difficult, it's common sense. Well, not for this statistic and many other statistics that I actually found on this, and that is why I decided to make this video, to see if the decathlon is actually amongst the hardest sports. Let's get into it. To bring my point better across, I'll be comparing the decathlon with other sports that I believe are demanding throughout the video. But before I can actually make this comparison, we need to understand what the decathlon is, or well, for women's sake, the heptathlon. But for the sake of this video, I'll be referring primarily to the decathlon rather than the heptathlon. So, the decathlon is an official event in track and field that consists of 10 other track and field events that need to be completed over the course of 2 days, dividing them equally with 5 events per day. These events, chronologically, are the 100 meter, long jump, shot put, high jump, 400 meter, all on day 1, and day 2 consists of the 110 meter hurdles, discus throw, pole vault, javelin throw, and finishes off with a nice 1500 meter run. On paper, this proves to be demanding, physically demanding, minimum rest. After all, the decathlon world champion is usually called the world's greatest athlete. To prove how hard an actual decathlon is, I will be speaking about it in 3 different categories. And on a side note, just remember that I've never participated in a decathlon and have no intention of doing so. Just keep that in mind throughout the video. Now, for the first aspect I'll be using to actually analyze what makes a decathlon actually demanding is, I mean, the main part that is a part of every single sport. The main aspect of sport, and that is the physical effort. That is what sport is. You get better through practice, that breaks the muscles down and builds them up again, making the body tolerate tougher training sessions, in turn getting stronger and better. Most, if not all sports, go through this process. Sports such as tennis are especially demanding in this category and require a very high level of athleticism. On average, a tennis player loses 2 to 3 kilograms of their weight during a match, due to the high intensity, literally running around the court and hitting a ball precisely. Rowing is also a very demanding sport, although not as long as a tennis match, still manages to be equally demanding, if not more. Unlike tennis, where you stop and run and stop and run, which requires strong joints and muscles to keep accelerating, rowing requires a constant flow of strength. In rowing, the main force needed is to push against the constant flow of water, and if we know anything about chemistry, there are more particles in water than in the air. Meaning that more force is needed to move forward. This in itself places rowing very high on the physically demanding list. On top of that, by speaking of the water force, we can also say that other aquatic sports are equally, if not more demanding, like water polo. In a nutshell, just imagine having to play handball, but you're not allowed to move freely because you're literally in water and the water is keeps holding you back. Yeah, no, I can't imagine doing that for a living, but people do it. Shout out to them. And yeah, those are just a few examples of sports that I believe are above and beyond in how demanding they are. The elite of the elite in demandingness. Is that a word? Now, where does this leave us? I think this clearly paints a picture of why some of the most physically demanding sports are actually so demanding, be it just by how much the body has to work or by the impact that follows. Luckily for my impact, the decathlon is equally as demanding as the sports that I just mentioned. What sets the decathlon apart from the other sports is the quantity. You see, the decathlon in itself is unique as it covers 10 events over a record-breaking 2 days. That means one thing: little recovery time between doing the events. This means that an athlete's performance will drop as the competition goes on. That's just how it works. To be frank, this happens in all sports. Athletes' performances will always drop, be it unable to maintain one's top speed whilst running a 100-meter dash, fatigue towards the end of a football match, or even loss of focus whilst you're doing archery due to lack of concentration. But I'll touch upon that a bit later. But back to decathlon. Decathletes need to stay at or close to their peak performance to actually stay in the competition of the decathlon, due to how the point system and how points are given for each event. Comparing to the former decathlon world record holder, held by Ashton Eaton, to the current Olympic decathlon record set by Damian Warner at the Tokyo 2020 Olympics, Eaton set 2 personal bests while having in his former world record, whilst Warner only PB'd in 1 event. I mean, this shows how vital it is to stay at peak performance throughout 2 whole days of activity. A study conducted on football players sprinting and recovering in 2016 took them an average 3 days to fully recover from a sprinting training session. And this study not only applies to these football players and decathletes, but sports competitions that share round-robin type format, which are usually over within a few days, such as tennis or taekwondo, where the latter usually is completed within a couple of hours after the first kick is done. This means that athletes need to be fully trained to be able to endure many matches and events, and unlike in team sports, there are no substitutions that can save them here. I believe thus in pure terms of physical demands, the decathlon is it's clearly demanding. But it just doesn't stop there. There's far more to a decathlon and every other sport that builds up the foundation of the physical performance. The technical aspect. Technique. This is a vital aspect in determining an athlete's success in the sport. The precision needed to throw a curling curl, the precision needed to kick a football, the accuracy of an archer shooting their shot, and the boxer throwing their punches. The technique is worked on a lot by athletes, as the better you get at the technique, the better you get at the sport, the more efficient you become. And in turn, it just makes you better. Boxing, for instance, in my opinion, a technical fighter that wears down the opponent is far better than a heavy hitter fighter that has no clue how to throw punches and just relies on their pure strength. There are a lot more sports that require a lot of technique, but the one that I think requires a lot more technique than most other sports, in my opinion, it goes to golf. Knowing how much force to put behind your swing and just thinking about the distance needed between the golf for where you need to get the golf ball into the hole. I mean, hand-arm coordination, whatever that's called. Yeah, that's difficult. The sports mentioned above have an advantage of being that the athlete would only need to specify in one single sport. However, for the decathlete, that is simply not the case. The decathlete has to specialize in 10 events that are all to an extent different from each other, and out of these 10, I mean, it can be argued that all 10 of these events are heavily, you need to have solid techniques in all of these events, but I'd say that 7 out of these need a high amount of, have a very high emphasis on technique and how well you can do that in the sport. Now, there are sports where an athlete should specify in more than just their given role or technique that they choose, be it in the MMA, where there's a huge advantage if you have a fighter who knows how to master more than one martial art, like having a good offensive game in taekwondo, whilst having a strong ground game through Brazilian jiu-jitsu, and then a strong grappling stance through judo. I mean, even football players, to an extent, especially those in midfield, need to be just as capable at attacking as defending, whilst also being able to hold on to position for long stretches of the game. Now, back to the decathlete. They need to master the technique of the various different events. Although other sports require different techniques, like offense and defense, they are simply just quite related in the field of that sport. However, there's a great difference between throwing a discus and jumping the long jump. I mean, yes, it does. It builds up on it's kind of linked together by the athlete's athleticism and their strength, their athlete's strength. Just by writing this, the only instance where I can see another athlete try to master 2 aspects that are completely different from each other is chess boxing. Again, not saying that the decathlon is objectively the hardest sport, but there's so many technical aspects that are present in the decathlon that absolute mastery in one single aspect is rare. But to be able to compete at a high level in this event requires far above average skills in the different events of the decathlon that make it very demanding. I mean, if you look at the statistics, the professional decathlete needs to, I mean, have like the world championship qualifying times literally in almost all their events. I mean, they are the best of the best athletes in the world, because they have to be really good at everything they do. That's just how it is. I mean, but there's one more aspect which I believe needs to be touched upon before we can determine if the decathlon is deserves to be on these statistically demanding sports lists. Moving on to the third and final aspect of this research. But first, since we're like halfway through the video, I mean, don't forget to subscribe and leave a like if you enjoyed the video so far. Don't worry, it's completely voluntary if you want to. But now, back to the video. So, when we talk about the psychological effects that an athlete feels, I'm talking about the athlete's thought process and motivation during their sport. Not life-damaging psychological effects such as those that arise from injuries, which are, I mean, especially common in NFL. The NFL players who, I mean, which is why these psychological effects usually are a prime factor in why the average NFL player's average career span is 3 to 4 years. It is clear that if something does not go as planned for any sport, or any practice for that matter, one starts doubting oneself and one's abilities. Let's say a football striker scores, well, I don't know what, 1 out of 500 shots on target. That clearly has an impact on them and their motivation and self-worth. Unless, of course, you're Nicholas Bendtner. I mean, I don't have much to say or research to back this up, but in the decathlon where we have to be at near perfection in 10 events, mathematically, there is a greater chance of messing up and failing due to fatigue, which then in turn has the athlete lose motivation and doubt their abilities. On top of that, if an athlete fails to achieve a distance or reach the goal, they are awarded with 0 points, which directly puts them out of the competition. Which means they're constantly thinking that they cannot mess up in order to progress in the competition, which can lead them to do safe jumps. If they miss, for instance, 2 attempts at a long jump, their final attempt is in some cases a safe jump, just in order to ensure that they get some points, which can still keep them going into the competition. As a whole, this section could be analysed much deeper, but I believe that the thought process of decathletes is far more different than an ordinary athlete due to the thinking about the competition as a whole, as well as event to event, which require different techniques and so on. All I'm saying is that the decathlon wears the mind out more than any other sport, in my opinion. Maybe not the marathon or an Ironman. I feel like those are just long and tiring that you get bored, which is a whole nother level of being psychologically worn out. And to conclude this research, should the decathlon be ranked much higher on sports difficulty lists? Yes, definitely. I mean, people call them the world's greatest athletes when they win major championships. But in the end, this is only my opinion. I believe that the decathlon is difficult and demanding in all those 3 aspects that I've analysed. And this is 100% one of the most demanding sports of all time. But that leaves us with one final question. Is the decathlon the hardest sport? Well, maybe I will answer that question at some point in the future. And that right there is the end of the video. I really hope that you guys enjoyed this video. I'm trying to experiment a bit around with different types of content to make it like a bit more varied on the channel, to make it more like instead of just having like track vlog after track vlog after track vlog. But yeah, I mean, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you did, please leave a like and subscribe and comment down below, because those things all in the end really help out the channel. And that's all I really have to say. I just really hope that you enjoyed the video, and I hope you have a good rest of your day, week, or rest of your weekend. I know I am, because Arsenal actually won the North London derby last Sunday, and I'm really happy about that. And yeah, it's going to be a good week for me. So yeah, just hope you enjoyed the video once again. And for now, that's that, and I guess I'll see you in the next one. Herman, out.